How many leads should marketing generate in B2B? I'm going to show you a simple formula that you can use in order to know what you need to hit your financial target, along with two other things you really should be tracking. How many leads should marketing generate in B2B? I'm going to show you a simple formula that you can use so that you know what you need to do to hit your financial target, plus two additional things you really should be tracking if you want to hit your revenue. So here's what typically happens for most consultants, executive coaches, trainers, professional service providers. They build a marketing plan. They throw a whole bunch of marketing spaghetti at the wall. They write blog articles, they do podcasts, they update their website, they do posts on LinkedIn, on X, on Threads, on TikTok, on Instagram. They start their own podcast. They go and speak at a few different conferences. They do all of this stuff and they just hope and pray that some of that marketing spaghetti will stick to the wall. What ends up happening instead is they do all of this activity, and then about 80 to 90% of their leads end up coming in through word of mouth. Now, there's nothing wrong with word of mouth. It's great when your professional network ends up sending you a great client. Here's where the problem lies. If your revenue, if keeping a roof over your head is dependent upon word of mouth, essentially what it means is that your business is in the hands of an untrained, unmanaged, unaccountable sales force. You have outsourced your business development responsibilities as a business owner to everyone else in the world, and you have no control over it. There's nothing that you can do in order to ensure your network will bring you the exact right clients. It's really entirely up to them. So it's really important, and it's one of the first things that we do with our Bold House clients is really put them back in the driver's seat of the revenue creation in their business. And so that's really what we're talking about here when we start looking at how many leads you need to have in your business in order to hit your revenue target. So I'm going to give you a quick calculation that you can use, and when you start tracking the right things, you're going to be in control and make sure that at the end of the year, you're not disappointed again in where your revenue ended up. So let's take a look at this formula. Before we can look at this formula, we do need to agree on what we mean by the term lead. And when you're selling to organizations in the B2B space, leads are not clicks, they are not opt-ins to an email list or likes on a LinkedIn post. In B2B, a lead means one thing. It is a booked conversation with a real decision maker. And by real decision maker, we mean folks who not only have budget, but they also have the authority to saying yes to working with an outside expert like you. If all of your marketing efforts aren't leading to actual conversations with decision makers, then all of that energy is wasted time. So that's your new definition. A lead is a booked conversation. All right, let's take a look at the math. All right, so this is how you calculate how many leads you need to be generating from any and all marketing activities that you invest your time and money into. The first piece is setting your annual revenue goal. How much do you want to make in the calendar year? Let's say for this example, it's $500,000 in your coaching business, your consulting business. You want to earn $500,000 of revenue a year. That's a great, healthy target. Once you have that target, step 2 is to define your average client value. So if you were to look at all of the clients that you've worked with over, we recommend the last 3 to 5 years, what is the average size of the transactions that B2B organizations are investing with you? In this example, we're going to say it's $25,000. That means that we can now calculate the number of clients that you need. So if your average deal size is $25,000, your goal is $500,000, Obviously, that means you're going to need 20 clients in the year. Once you know that number, the next thing you need to do is apply your close rate. And this is probably the biggest number that we see folks not track. They're having conversations. A lot of times they're defining these conversations as great conversations. And in Bold House land, we do not talk about great conversations, because what I can tell you as a coach, a consultant, a professional services provider, great conversations will make you broke. Oftentimes what happens in a great conversation is that you have met a decision maker who loves the topic that you love just as much. So let's say you're an expert in corporate communications and you sit down with the head of corporate communications and you start talking shop with them. Well, they value communications inside an organization. That's why they're in the field of corporate communications. You value corporate communications. That's why that's your business. So you start having all of this back and forth and you see the world in the same place. But that great conversation doesn't lead to an actual paying client opportunity. And that's why great conversations can be deadly to your business. So you need to know what your close rate is. Out of all of the conversations that you're having with real decision makers who can buy from you, are you in fact closing 1 in 8 opportunities, 1 in 10 opportunities, 1 in 20 opportunities, 1 in 2 opportunities? What's your close rate? In this example, we're going to assume that your close rate is 20%. You're closing 1 in 5 opportunities. So if you're closing 1 out of every 5 opportunities, you need 20 clients that are paying an average of $25,000 in order to earn $500,000 in the year. That means that over the course of the year, you need to have approximately 2 conversations with real decision makers every single week for 50 weeks. So that means you're only taking 2 weeks off, which isn't actually realistic as a small business owner. There will be way more weeks than that, I hope, that you are taking off: holidays, sick time, business travel time, professional development time. But assuming you have 50 weeks in your business for business development, 2 conversations per week is exactly how many leads your marketing effort must deliver in order for you to generate $500,000 a year in your business. Knowing these numbers at the start of the year makes a huge difference in where you end up at the end of the year. All right, here are 2 more things I want to see you tracking in your business that will make a huge difference in your revenue at the end of the year. The first one is, how many real decision makers are you talking to in total over the course of the year? Start tracking every conversation with someone inside an organization, whether it's a big corporate, a mid-market, a nonprofit, higher ed. Who are your conversations happening with? Are they happening with the C-suite, C-suite -1, C-suite -2? Are they happening with first-level managers or individual contributors? 2 things are true about this. One, we often see folks who used to work inside of organizations and maybe they left as a mid-level manager or a senior manager. Typically what will happen is these individuals will gravitate naturally to speaking to folks inside organizations that were at the same rung of the ladder that they were, as opposed to really elevating. As a business owner, you're a CEO, you need to be talking to senior vice presidents, executive vice presidents, people in the C-suite. You want to pay attention to how many conversations are happening at that level. Forget your close rate for just a second. Where are you actually spending your time? When your time is spent 80% of the time with the folks who are really in a position where they have budget and they have authority, your revenue will change dramatically in your business. We had a really interesting conversation recently with a member of our Bold House collective at one of our gatherings, and she realized as we were having this conversation that she had spent the last year having about 50 to 60 conversations, but about 80% of those conversations were with folks who had no authority. They did not have the money to buy from her. They did not have the budget to buy from her. They did not have the ability internally to say, hey, we're going to work with this individual. However, when she looked at just the folks who were actual decision makers, her close rate was about 36%. Now imagine if 80% of her time would have been spent talking exclusively to real decision makers. The next thing I want you to start paying attention to is the readiness level of decision makers. At any given time, only about 1 to 3% of the decision makers that you're talking to are in a ready now place to buy from you. Another 10, 15% are ready soon. A little bit more are ready later. Some will be ready never. They are what we call the unconverted. They don't believe in the thing that you do. But when you start coming back from every conversation, whether it's at a conference or a one-to-one meeting on Zoom or a webinar, whatever the circumstances are, make note of every decision maker that you spoke to and give them a score on their readiness level. Ready now, ready soon, ready later, or ready when, meaning they won't be ready until something out of the blue happens and it would finally shift them into a place of readiness. Pretty soon, you will realize just how many conversations you really need to have with decision makers that have the budget, have the authority, and when you realize where they are in terms of the readiness level, you will see that the number of conversations that you're having needs to grow exponentially. Okay, now you have a simple calculation to know exactly how many leads your marketing needs to generate. Of course, marketing is only one side of the coin. The next video I want you to go watch is how to sell to large companies. There we're really going to talk about conversion into paying clients. I've put that link for you right below. Click on it now and I'll meet you over there.